The show where anything goes. Motivation, mindset, recovery, philosophy, and life. We become who we are through what we experience. We all have a story, and this is My Backstory with Josh Boyer.
Yeah, My Backstory podcast with Jeff Kyle. I'm out here in where are we? Robinson, Texas. So outside of Waco. Super stoked about this podcast because I want to hear like your story. I think a lot of people, obviously, they've watched the movie, they've read the book about your brother, and I want to hear your story. I want to hear about like your life. You know, where you grew up, what your life was like, joining the Marine Corps, what that experience was like, and then we can get into talking about. You know, I want to ask some questions about the movie, like how accurate it was, like things like that. You know, I think questions that probably a lot of people want to know. You know?
Oh yeah.
So I'll let you go ahead and take it away, man.
All right. So, you know, I was born and raised here in Texas. I was born in Abilene out in West Texas. My dad he worked for Southwestern Bell. So he started out as a pole climber and worked his way up to, I guess, management. Had a corner office and, you know, hated it every day because he had to wear a suit and tie, but, you know, it provided the family with what we needed. We were raised very simple. We raised cattle and horses. We worked the cows off of our horses, so we trained our own horses. And I mean, we knew a day's work. You know, from the time we were little, we were always out there working cows with Dad and fixing fence or hauling hay or whatever. And it got to the point where we were spending so much money raising cows, feeding them, that we ended up buying the feed store because we could get it cheaper if we owned the feed store than just going in and buying it. So we bought the feed store and ran it, and you know, so that was added another chore to the day. But yeah, I mean, we were simple family. You know, we sat around the table every night and had supper and prayed, and you know, I knew from the time I was little, just like every Marine that you ever talked to, they knew from the time they were little that they were going to be in the Marine Corps. Yeah. And I guess when I was 7 or 8, I can remember, you know, having posters on my wall about the Marines. I grew up with a kid that his dad was a recon Marine. Yeah. And so I idolized him. You know, he would tell me about recon and everything. And so I wanted to be that guy. Yeah. And so, you know, that's whenever I didn't go in right out of high school, you know, wanted to kind of get out and sow my oats a little bit and grow up, I guess, because I think if I'd have gone in right out of high school, they'd have ate me up because I wasn't the best kid in the world, you know, didn't deal well with authority. Right. So, so I got out and experienced life a little bit. And then 6 days after I turned 21, then I was standing on the yellow footprints and loved every minute of it, you know, awesome. And enjoyed the suck like everybody else. So,
did you go in with a recon contract?
No, I didn't. No, I went in as 03 open. So just like every 03 open guy, I was infantry. So, did 4 years with 3rd Marines out of Hawaii, and got out, finished up. So I went in 2000, finished up in 2004 with 3rd Marines, stayed on the reserve side, came to Houston, and my wife was actually, she was going to college at College Station there at A&M. Yep. So I was going to blend, getting ready to go to A&M, and I was still in the reserves down in Houston. And so we kept getting deployed, so I just dropped out of school and then went over to 4th Recon shortly after that and stayed with them and deployed with them and finished up.
How long were you in? So like total?
8 years total.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then what'd you do when you got out? Like what was your plan?
Oh, plans. Yeah, see, I didn't have a plan. That was my thing. Yeah, so I suggest everybody getting out has a plan.
Right.
You know, I figured I'd try the law enforcement side.
Yeah.
But one, I couldn't pass hearing tests. So I tried out I interviewed for local DPS or for state DPS. Yep. and made it all the way through, and they denied me at the very end for my hearing and psych eval.
Yeah.
So, it's just wasn't meant to be. No hard feelings, no big deal.
Yep.
It took me, up until 3 years ago to actually figure out what my calling in life was.
Yeah.
Or, what I'm supposed to do as a civilian. Once I came on once this job that I'm at now was offered to me, that was kind of my saving grace. I was kind of in a black hole, in a bad spot, didn't know what I wanted to do, didn't know where I was going. Dealing with all my demons from the past and trying to figure out who I was.
Yeah.
So this kind of put me on the track. And
what were some of the challenges you had when you got home?
Just trying to reintegrate. I mean, that was, daily life in the military, especially at war, was a hell of a lot easier than it is trying to be a civilian. You knew what to expect every day over there.
Right.
But coming home, that was a whole different story. So my main deal was, I was so used to being a part of something and wanting to do bigger and better things that once I got out, without a plan, I didn't know where I was, didn't know what I was doing. So trying to find my way was my biggest issue, and I mean, that led to depression and, everything like that. And, so after actually finding my way, then, I mean, it was a lot easier to deal with everything that I had to go through.
So what was the first thing that you did? Like when you started, I mean, now you have this, what's the name of your company?
United States Tactical.
So what was it before? Like, what was the first thing you did when you got out? Like, what was your first job?
So I worked at a gun shop,
Yeah.
And I did that when I was, interviewing for the highway patrol.
Yeah.
Then whenever, and that was, I kind of figured that, I didn't have any doubt that I was going to get on. So, I kind of set my sights on that. Didn't have any plan B.
Yeah.
So, whenever that didn't work out, that kind of, knocked my dauber in the dirt a little bit.
Yeah.
Started, acting out, I guess, like a kid, acting like a kid again.
Yeah.
And having problems with marital, just being a real dick.
Yeah.
So a buddy of mine that I'd worked with prior to, working ranches and everything, he called me up and said that he had a job up in Oklahoma and he needed another guy.
Yeah.
So for a year, I moved up to Oklahoma and worked on a ranch and kind of got away from everything and, went back to what I knew, because that's how I was raised. So, went back to my comfort zone and worked up there for a year, moved to a little town called Hamilton, which is southwest of Fort Worth, about 70 miles, and worked out there on a ranch for about 2.5 years. And then my wife got a job here in Waco working for the hospital. She's a physical therapist. So we moved back to Waco, and, there's not a whole lot of ranches around here in Waco. So her family owns a cabinet shop. I was like, I'll just go work for the family,
Yeah.
And so I was a carpenter for a while, did all that, and sucked at that, didn't like it, didn't get along with the family. And, which, I mean, her family's great, but, doing something that you don't like and dealing with all your junk, then, it didn't make life very easy. So I left that and I sold Harleys for a little while.
Yeah.
I just kind of bounced around. I couldn't keep a job. I'm a horrible employee. It's bosses don't faze me. If you say something I don't like, then I'm going to throw it back at you.
Yeah.
Most bosses don't appreciate that. And, I was a real dick for a long time.
Yeah.
And finally got the ultimatum from my wife that either I get right or her and the girls are going to leave. Yeah. And so I started looking around and found a program to go through, went through the program and helped me out a bunch. And
program for what?
For it, I hate to say PTS, but I guess in a way it is, just dealing with all your demons.
Yeah.
It's not one of those sit around a campfire and tell war stories, because most of us have all been through the same thing, just at different times, different locations. So, but they kind of got my head back right and gave me some tools to see things coming. Notice when I'm fixing to have an episode or something like that, and kind of react to it a little different. So, got better.
Yeah.
And about the same time as when I was offered this position here at United States Tactical, and it's been a freaking blessing being here.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Does it feel like you're part of the same, like getting back in with like doing the tactical stuff, like kind of like giving you that same sense of camaraderie or being around like the military folks and stuff like that?
It does. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of our stuff isn't in the military just yet. We've got some things being tested by the military, but being around the law enforcement, I've made a lot of connections in the law enforcement world, and trying to do anything and everything for those guys to make their job a little bit easier. Taking what I learned from being downrange, the gear that we had, and just making it better, lighter and, more user friendly.
For sure.
Because when I was in, I would take my gear that was issued to me and take it apart and stitch it back together how I thought it should be. Right. And so, I'd use it and my teammates would see it and they'd want me to do the same thing for theirs. So, I'd spend the evenings in my barracks room stitching everybody's gear back together the way they wanted it.
Nice.
So, I never thought I'd be sitting in front of a sewing machine building stuff, but, here I am.
Here we are, right?
Yeah.
So I got to ask you, man, how close were you and your brother growing up?
Growing up, we were real close. High school age.
How far apart are you guys?
4 years.
Okay.
4 years, yeah. So, just like any brothers, we gave each other fits, beat the hell out of each other, mainly him beating the hell out of me. But, we were tight. Growing up, it was everything he did, I wanted to do. There was some things that I was better at than he was. And it was funny, even he said in one interview that I was a lot better shot than he ever was.
Right.
And of course I threw that in his face every chance I got. So, there at the end, there's no way I could compete with him. But, he was a perfectionist. He honed his skill and, he did everything he could to be the best. We got real tight whenever we both joined the military.
Yeah.
That gave us just one more thing to talk about and, cuss about and everything like that. So,
sure.
We were tight.
Was there ever a time like, because I have an older brother, and like sometimes you feel like you're living in your brother's shadow,
Oh yeah.
Did you ever feel like that you were walking in his shadow? Because of because I think while he was even before he got out, he's like, they call him the legend. He was doing these things and he had like a lot of, I don't know how accurate the movie is because I wasn't there. So I don't know what it was like, but it seemed like he was pretty well known, like even while he was active.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Whenever we were both active, it wasn't such a big deal because I never went around saying, hey, who my brother is. It wasn't one of those things. I actually had teammates that would make comments, man, there's this SEAL out there that's, he's doing some shit.
Yeah.
He's watching everybody. We're good to go if we go to his area.
Yeah.
So, I know. I heard about that. I heard about that guy. He's probably pretty cool. And so nobody ever put two and two together because nobody ever said his name. It was always, the legend or the devil of Ramadi or whatever,
Yeah.
So they never put two and two together. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to be, the little brother. I didn't want to be trying to, walk in his path. I wanted to make my own footsteps. So,
yeah. How accurate was that movie? The portrayal of not only him, but of you in that movie?
His part, they did a pretty good job on him. He was a protector through and through. He wasn't about the glory, wasn't about the fame. He was just wanting to help everybody that he could, whether he was up on his Overwatch or down on the ground, As far as me goes, that ain't me in the movie.
No.
The guy that they had play me, I never talked to him. He never got an email, nothing. So, that was one thing about the movie I didn't like, was how they portrayed everybody but him, but Chris.
Right.
They made him larger than life.
Yeah.
Which, he was a, outstanding man.
Yeah.
But where I fault them is they made everybody else weaker than what they really were. Right. Mark Lee, they showed him in the movie as, he was questioning why they were there and, didn't think they needed to be there. That wasn't Mark, at all. Mark was just as tough, just as badass as the rest of them. Right. I never met Chris on the tarmac. Right. I never cried that I wanted to go home. It was, right. It's Hollywood.
Yeah, for sure.
They do what they do to tell a story, and they reached a lot of people, and they told the story, and I think opened a lot of eyes. But I think they could have done a little different.
Yeah, for sure. And that's got to be a bummer, coming, because it was portraying you. That's got to be a bummer that you look at and you're like, that's not even accurate, man. It's fucked up, dude. Yeah. It sucks, man.
Yeah.
I know that's it's got to be a huge part of your life too. You know what I mean? Like, how much did you see your life change as a result of not just the movie, but the book as well?
Oh, a lot. Yeah.
Did it change the dynamic of your guys' relationship at all? Like when he started, he was going on talk shows and all kinds of, late night shows and all kinds of shit.
Just busy, as far as my life went, it wasn't that much different because we just went on about our daily lives, but, we didn't get to talk as much because he was constantly going somewhere, doing something, being on TV, doing interviews, things like that.
Yeah.
I can remember he was like a little kid after he first got off the phone with Bradley Cooper and they were talking about doing the movie.
Yeah.
And, he called me up. I was actually still working at the cabinet shop for my father-in-law, and phone rang and it was Chris, and I stepped outside and he was just giddy like a little schoolgirl, You'll never guess who I just got off the phone with. Right. And so that was really cool, and he asked me if I thought he should do it, if I thought he should go on with the movie. And I told him, yeah. I said, as long as you have a say in it and as long as, it's right, just like the book, he wasn't going to write the book unless it was right. And
was he happy with the
right
movie?
Reasons. It wasn't finished whenever.
So he didn't see any part of it before? Oh man.
No.
It's fucked up.
Yeah. So they didn't start filming until afterwards. He was working with the screenwriter, getting everything wrote up about it. Things were changed after he was killed.
Yeah.
So, it is what it is.
Right. How much would you say that your life has changed as a result of Chris dying?
Man, I think my life has been a whirlwind since his death.
In what ways?
Some good and some bad. There for a long time it was, so I did the family message right after he was killed. I went on the Blaze and, put out the family message because I didn't want anybody else doing it. They were going to have somebody else that wasn't from the family do it, and I wasn't in that. So,
yeah.
It needed to come from the Kyle family, from the real Kyle family. And so I did that. And, from that day forward, it was just, other TV stations and things like that calling me wanting to do interviews. And it was a whirlwind, you know. I kind of got caught up in it for a little bit. I hate to admit that.
That's big of you though, to be able to admit it.
Yeah. I mean, I did. I got caught up in it. I got caught up in the limelight and, you know, I enjoyed it or I thought I did. And everything that was going on just compounded everything that I was dealing with. And it just sent me, you know, in a downward spiral. And that was a lot of when my wife gave me that ultimatum, you know. So, and I saw it eventually.
Right.
I saw what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so I backed off and, you know, now I'm a lot happier than I was.
Yeah, for sure.
Doing that.
Do you think part of that was because you weren't having the opportunity to even grieve your brother just because you were so busy, like being the face of like the family basically? I
think so. Yeah. Yeah. I didn't give myself time and I purposely wanted to stay busy. So I didn't think about it, you know, so I didn't break down, you know, and feel the pain.
Yeah. Have you stayed in contact with his wife and kids and stuff like that?
We did for a little while and then she just cut us off. So I actually haven't seen my niece and nephew in 3 or 4 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. So
how far are they?
She sent a letter, or her lawyers sent a letter to us that we cannot have any contact with them except through their lawyers.
Oh man, every family, you know, has their bullshit, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's a bummer. You know, I think it's a bummer, but at the same time, it kind of at least for me, I always felt like alone, you know, and like the family shit that I had going on in my life. You know, this person's not talking to that person. You haven't seen their kids in however long, whatever. But the more people you talk to, you realize that
it's everywhere.
Every family's got their issues, man. And you're not that special.
No, no, not at all.
Right.
It's funny what fame will do to you.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what happened? You think that was the result of that?
Yeah.
It's a bummer, man.
Yeah.
So why don't you share with the listeners, like what you're up to now, like what you're doing now and kind of where you see yourself going?
So outside of United States Tactical, my wife, myself, and my mom and dad, we started a foundation called American Valor Foundation. Right. And we did that we started out doing that to keep Chris's memory alive. You know, what he fought for, even when he got out, you know, he was doing things for vets and trying to help everybody. So we wanted to continue his mission. And so we started the foundation and we've been raising money for other foundations, other organizations that, you know, that we vet, that we look at and that are actually out there doing the right things, you know, and actually giving the money where it should go. Right. And so we would raise money for them and donate, you know, large amounts. We've donated anywhere from $115,000 to 1 year we did $450,000.
Oh wow!
And you know, gave that all to the foundation that we picked that year.
How do you vet, like, for a person like me, like an outsider, whatever? I'm a veteran. But if I want to donate to a foundation, like there's a lot of foundations out there that aren't, I mean, let's be honest, they're just not ethical. You know what I mean? So you have these people that are starting foundations and then the money goes unaccounted for. You know, it's like, where'd that money go for? And next thing you know, you see them with a private jet and a nice car. And so what's a good way for like a civilian or an outsider to know, like, hey, this is a foundation that I'm giving my money to and it's legit? Is there a way for people to know?
Well, nonprofits, legitimate nonprofits, their financials they legally have to have that for public access.
Right.
So you can contact any foundation and ask for their financials, and legally they're supposed to give that to you.
Right.
And, you know, like us, I mean, we put up on our website, you know, everything that we've done, how much money we've given out, you know, to who we give it to, things like that. And the way that we vet them is for a long time, our requirement was that you were a 90-10. So 90% of every dollar that came in went back out to the veterans or to where it was supposed to go.
Right.
And, you know, that's hard to do. That's really hard to do. Whenever organizations start growing, giving 90% back is extremely hard.
Because you have operating costs, right? So,
Yeah. Our foundation, we have 0 paid employees. We have 0 overhead. So of course we purchase apparel to sell, but we keep, we annotate every year a certain amount of money that we're going to use to buy apparel and swag and stuff like that. But then the rest, all the proceeds from that go back to either other foundations or to veterans or first responders, paying bills, doing whatever we got to do for them. So, we keep all that public access at any time. It's been hard to find 90-10 foundations to do that for.
Right.
It's, if you're a foundation, a veteran or first responder foundation, if you're giving 80% back, that's saying something. That's really good. So, we're blessed that we're not so big that we have to have paid employees,
right,
to do stuff for us. We have so many volunteers that come out and do stuff for us. A lot of the things that we get done are actually donated to us. So, we do everything and keep the end game in mind, keep the veteran and first responder in mind.
What's the mission of the foundation?
So we take vets and first responders on hunting trips, fishing trips. We will sponsor them to send them to programs, either mental health or whatever. We've bought a washer and dryer for a veteran. We've paid medical bills for a first responder. Anything that we can do to help, we're going to do it.
Yeah. And how do you guys go about raising money? You said that selling apparel, but what's some other ways, like the best way that you guys either make money or raise money? Yeah.
We have events, fundraising events. We have clay shoots, golf tournaments. There's a place south of here that does a comedy show for us every year.
Oh,
and
nice.
and the comics are actually veterans.
Oh, nice.
So they bring them in, so it's a win-win for everybody. So, they get to do their deal, and, we get the proceeds from it. So, we're, every year in May, the first weekend in May, we always have the Chris Kyle Memorial Benefit.
Right.
And so that's our largest fundraiser. And that's when we'll raise, 100 plus for the year.
Do you know a guy named Josh OBrien by chance?
Josh OBrien.
He's a comedian and he's a veteran. So if you don't know him, I would love to link you guys up, for that event that you guys have with the comedians. He's based out of LA, but he's traveling all over the place doing stuff with USO and
Nice.
whatever. I think he'd be a great guy for you guys to link up with because I know he's totally interested in helping in any way he can, any veteran organization. So he's down for that.
Yeah.
How do you want to be remembered? And the reason I ask you that is because I know for me, like I said, like growing up and you got a brother who's, doing whatever. I know I wouldn't want to be remembered as my brother's little brother.
Yep.
I just don't, you know, I want to make, like you said, you want to make your own path.
That's right.
So if you knew that you were going to die, within the next week or whatever, how would you want to be remembered? What was the legacy that you would want to leave?
I guess that I never quit. I never gave up. Never gave up on myself. I never gave up on anybody else. I've always tried to, I guess, keep a positive outlook on things. It's not easy, but, I always knew that there was something out there that I was meant to do. And for me, with outside this job, the foundation, being able to travel around and talk to, I just, 2 weeks ago, I went to a high school graduation. I was the commencement speaker.
Right.
And I had never done that before in my life. That was the first time I'd walked across the stage since 1996. And, that was huge to me because teenagers, adults, you can talk to them all day long and they might hear one or two things that you have to say, but they'll tune you out if they don't 100% agree with you. Right. But high school kids, I mean, you can mold them.
Yep.
And whatever you say, right or wrong, they're going to remember it.
Impressionable for sure.
Yeah. So, and every one of them, without somebody telling them, they came up to me afterwards and shook my hand and thanked me for being there and thanked me for what I had to say. I don't write speeches. I kind of figure out what topics I want to talk about, and then I just get up there and wing it. Whatever comes to mind, whatever comes from my heart, that's what I'm going to say. Yep. And sometimes I offend people and I really don't care. It is what it is. Yeah. And to me, I think people, they like that. They don't want you to be a robot. They want to see the real person. And, I was able to go to the VA here in Waco. They have one of the largest, PTS programs. It's a 8-week in-house program. And at every class that they had, I would go talk to them, and I'd walk in there and they'd all be seated and they would have people from other organizations telling them what they could do for them, what was out there for them, things like that. And I wasn't in there to tell them what I could do for them.
Right.
I was in there to tell them what they could do for themselves. Yeah. Because no matter what branch of service, no matter what era you served,
it happens to me every time, dude. I'm doing a podcast, I start like, oh man, I
got something in my throat.
That's all good.
It doesn't matter where you came from, what you did. Yeah. We're all warriors. We all have that mentality, to never give up, to always push forward, and always do something for somebody else. That's what a warrior is. A fighter goes out there and fights for themselves, right, and fights for the glory of it.
Right.
Warriors go out there and they fight for others, and law enforcement, everybody, that's what in my opinion, they're all warriors, and they need to continue to remember that and continue to be warriors, even though they're not wearing the uniform.
What are some of the things that you were dealing with PTS personally, if you don't mind sharing them? The reason I'm asking that is because I know there's going to be other veterans that are going to listen to this podcast for sure.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. And what are some of the symptoms that you were dealing with, and what's some advice you can give other veterans that are probably dealing with some of the same stuff?
I had a lot of anxiety. I never was real good in crowds or things like that. But what I really noticed, what set me off, or what freaked me out, was I could be in a group of veterans and my anxiety would just kick up, and I wouldn't know what to do. Yeah. Wouldn't know where to go. There wasn't a rock big enough that I could hide under. Yeah. I slept okay. I didn't have to deal with a whole lot of night terrors. I had night terrors from time to time. I wouldn't wake up screaming and hollering. There was times that I did freak my wife out a little bit by hollering things, getting up out of bed and grabbing my pistol and kind of going through the house, and never remember it in the morning.
Oh, wow.
But mine was mainly the anxiety and depression.
And how'd you see that manifested, other than like you had agoraphobia, like being around people kind of weighed you out a little bit?
Yeah. And it was weird because I could be in a crowd, 1 week, and then the next week it'd be fine, and then the next week it
totally
hit me
triggered.
And it was, I don't know, it would come and go. It was weird.
You see a lot of guys that are dealing with it, and some of them are like, they don't even realize that they're having those symptoms of PTSD. They're just like, no, I'm totally cool, and it's like, it's outsiders that are looking, and they're like, no, you have all the symptoms, man. You need to go get help, Yeah. Were you drinking a lot more too?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, that's the other thing that gets a lot of people, I think.
That, to me, alcohol is one of the biggest setbacks, for veterans that have any kind of issues. Right. I drank a lot. I got better for a while, and then Chris was killed, and then I really started drinking again real heavy.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, I got away from the gym too.
Yeah.
And that, in my opinion, the gym is one of the best forms of therapy ever, you know, because a strong body's a strong mind.
For sure.
You know,
get in there and slaying, you know, like for me, like just helps me feel mentally like sharp, you know, when you're in the gym and you're just totally crushing yourself. You know?
Yeah.
But then you leave there and you're just like, oh man, I feel so much better, you know?
Yeah.
Sleep 100%. Better, your day's better, like everything's good. Like Jeremy and I were talking on the way up here, and we stopped at that nasty hamburger place known as Whataburger. And I was like, man, I feel like such a sleazy piece of shit sitting here going through the drive-thru and driving while we're eating this triple whatever it was. And
that's the nectar of the gods, man. Whataburger is the best.
So I think you know, there's something to be said about when I'm at home and I'm in the gym and I'm eating healthy and stuff like that. Like my life, just everything feels better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now I couldn't agree with you more on that.
Yeah, because, you know, I mean, when we're in the service, we're held to a different standard. You know, you have to stay fit.
Yep. And
that's not just for your physical being, that's for your mental being too.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally. What are, I'm going to ask you a couple questions I ask everyone that comes on the podcast. If you had one book or one person that inspired you the most throughout your entire life, who would that person be and what would that book be and why?
Now, you know I'm a Marine, right? Yeah, so I don't read a whole lot.
Eat some crayons.
Pop-ups are my favorite. You know, I didn't, 100% honest, I didn't read a whole lot of books until I joined, and I really didn't read until I got out.
Yeah.
Chris brought me his book after he wrote it, and he asked me to read it. And that was the first book that I've read cover to cover, nonstop, didn't put it down. Maybe I'm partial, I don't know. But, you know, I knew the stories from before, you know, because we had talked about them before. But reading it and having everything in place like that and knowing him, that was, you know, that meant a lot to me because he told his story. He made a name for himself, coming from nothing. You know, he wasn't this all-star football player. He wasn't, you know, he wasn't this big name before he went in, but he pushed himself to the limits every day. And when he wasn't on a sniper position, on an overwatch, he was doing anything and everything. When he was on leave, he would go sit out, you know, in the woods behind the house and listen to different birds and see if he could distinguish, you know, what bird was what, you know, and just hear different sounds and try to better his craft. And then to come out and write the book for the reasons he wrote the book. You know, a lot of people think that he wrote the book to make a little money or whatever. He didn't write the book to make any money. The only reason, the stipulation that he wrote the book was that the proceeds go to the two families of the guys that he lost.
Right.
So that was his stipulation.
Did they follow through with that?
They did not, or one person did not, because one person felt that money belonged to them after he was gone. So and I've been in contact with the families, and they haven't received anything. And I mean, they're good with it, whatever. So I think his book, you know, because he had the balls to come out and write a book when he was a big name at the time, and a lot of people kind of looked down on him for writing the book. You know, they were thinking he was out for the glory and things like that. You know, he went through all the right channels to make sure it was correct. and to make sure that the Navy approved of it and all of his teammates approved of it, all the families approved of it. So, I think I admire him for doing that and for telling the story. And, everybody that I talk to, they've read the book.
Yep.
And it's a hell of a story.
Oh yeah.
There could definitely be a sequel to it and be an even bigger story, but I think that book I think that's probably, maybe because I'm partial, but
yeah, that's
my favorite book.
What about person who inspired you the most?
My dad.
Yeah.
He was a dirt farmer from Kansas and literally came from nothing, worked his way up to provide for his family, did things that he didn't like to do. He never served, but he always taught us to respect the flag and what it stood for and respect the men and women that went before it, And so he never once stood in our way, no matter what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
So he always supported us 100% on all of our endeavors and, never once said, "I told you so," nothing like that. So,
was that an accurate portrayal of him in the movie?
He was a hard ass, but he never once ripped his belt off and slammed it on the table and said he was going to whip our ass. He said he was going to whip our ass a lot, and he did whip our ass a lot, but he wasn't, he's never given us that speech about,
sheepdog,
the sheepdog and the wolves. Yeah, it wasn't, that's another Hollywood thing. But, he was a very stern man. He still is.
Yeah.
And everybody that knows him, I get messages all the time. "Hey, can you ask your dad if he'll do this?" Because I don't want to talk to him. I'm scared of him.
Right.
And my dad has the biggest heart in the world. He's a gruff old country boy. And he's not going to change for anybody.
There's a grittiness. I was telling somebody else this the other day, how there's a difference between, you see guys that are from California or from that area or whatever. Not that they're all soft or anything by any means, but there's a difference between the Midwest guys and the guys who grew up in the country and the guys who grew up on the West Coast, because I don't know, man, grit has a lot to do with what you're going to end up doing in life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, work, like you said, growing up, working on a farm in the feed store, baling hay and doing all kinds of, some tough shit, man. It's like tough work, Yeah. And most guys never work a day like that hard ever in their life.
Yep.
So I think there's something to that for sure. The other question I want to ask you is, if you had one lesson that you learned growing up that you want to save somebody else from going through some of the same heartaches that maybe you did learning that lesson, what would that lesson be that you'd want to teach somebody, and why?
Man, you got some good questions.
It could be a soldier, coming up, or it could be just a guy, a girl, whatever. He's like, man, I learned a terrible lesson, man. I had to learn the hard way. So let me save you the heartache.
Yeah. I guess something that I was always raised by, and something that I instill in my kids. We all go through a lot of stuff that it'd be just easy just to say, screw it, I'm done, and walk away from it. I've been put in a lot of positions growing up and in through my adulthood that, it's a lot of uncomfortable positions and don't really know how to navigate through them, but sticking with it and figuring it out, even if you look like an asshole doing it. And I try to instill that in my kids. Once you start something, you're going to finish it, whether it be a fight, whether it be your evening supper or whatever. A sports, my kids, they follow everybody else,
Right.
Just like any kid. All my friends are doing this, I want to do it. All right, well, if you start it, you're going to finish it.
Yep.
one of my youngest daughter, she wanted to get into dance, and we didn't think it would last, and it lasted for just a little while. She enjoyed it for a minute, and then she was ready to quit. So, told her, well, you're going to suck it up, and you're going to finish it. You're going to wear that tutu, and you're going to get up there on stage, and once this last one's done, then you can quit. Then you can be done with it, but you're going to finish out your commitment. And, I think, to me, just it's become too easy to quit.
Oh, yeah.
Marriage, everything, getting divorced.
Yeah.
It would have been a lot easier for me just to tell my wife to pack her shit and leave than it would actually, take note of it and go get help, and anything that you do is worth fighting for, anything that's easy isn't worth it. So.
Yeah, it's so true, man. Because I think a lot of us, I've been through a divorce. I think if you talk to the majority of veterans out there, they've probably experienced a divorce.
Yep.
And I learned a lot from it. I look back on that, and I look at my marriage now, and like, it's not easy. There's times where it's fucking hard, man. Yeah. And especially like the traveling I do, and we got 4 boys at home, and like it's tough,
Yeah.
And there's been plenty of times that I was like, man, my life would be so much easier if I just hung it up, and said, you know what? I'm going to be a single guy so I can travel all over the country and do my thing, and life will just be easier. I don't have to hear you bitch at me or whatever. But there's so much for me, I'm so grateful for the fact that I haven't given up. It's like when the times are tough, I stick it out and say, hey man, we're going to work on this. And a lot of that is like swallowing your pride sometimes, like you're saying, you went and got the help that you needed, because there was times where my wife would come to me and try to tell me something. Hey, you don't know shit, and my pride got the best of me, So now it's like, okay, I'll listen to you, like maybe there's something to this,
Yeah.
So no, that's huge, man. Not quitting, dude. Just like sticking it out. I like that. What's the best way for people to connect with you? If they want to reach out to you and connect with you.
I have a lot of people connect with me on Facebook. I definitely don't give out my cell phone number because it blows up enough. I don't need more.
Right.
Emails, they can contact the foundation. Those are probably the easiest ways, either social media or email.
And what's the websites of the foundation?
It's AmericanValorFoundation.org.
Okay. That's awesome, man. And what's the best way for people if they want to donate? Can they donate from the website?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Sure. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and kind of what you're up to. And I like it, man. I think it's awesome, man. The foundation is great. And I think that there needs to be more out there that are more transparent and doing things to actually help, and share their, help other veterans that are in the same position, that a lot of us have been in, and first responders. I don't want to forget those guys.
Yeah. And like us, we know that we're not the answer to everything. Right. So we team up with a lot of other organizations. There's not one organization out there that has the answers for every issue, and I think that's a big problem within the veteran and first responder nonprofits is they all think that they're the answer, right. And they're not, and they always try to keep it all to themselves instead of, we're all one team, we're all out for one mission, and, we need to act like it. We need to, share notes and, team up with each other.
Yeah, there's so much strength in coming together, rather than tearing each other down, and you see it like we were talking about before the podcast. There's a lot of that, veterans like kind of, breaking each other down, discrediting their service, this and that, any little thing they can do to pick you apart. And it's like, let's stick together, man, help each other out, instead of breaking each other down. Doesn't make sense. But
yeah.
What are some other organizations you want to plug any that you guys have worked with or that you think are great foundations that you guys are teamed up with?
We work a lot with Save a Warrior.
Is that with BAM?
What's that?
BAM? Is that Save a Warrior? Is that BAM? Is he the one that runs that?
No. It's a group out of Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry. I was thinking of another foundation. I just did a podcast with a guy. I thought it was Save a Warrior. Maybe I'm tripping. I don't know.
Unless he's a part of it somehow.
He might be a part of it. I think it is BAM. I think we're talking about the same thing. Maybe we're not. And if I'm not talking about the same thing, I apologize. So Save a Warrior is the other one?
Yeah, Save a Warrior, Mission 22.
Yep.
We do a lot with 22 Kill, Helicopters for Heroes. We teamed up with them this year to do a lot with them. Hunting for Healing. That's a big one. That's Kevin Lace, who played himself in the movie as Dauber.
Yeah.
He's got his foundation in Florida, and they do a lot of hunting and fishing excursions for vets.
Nice, man.
Yeah. So, I could sit here all day long and, talk about different ones that we've worked with and that we enjoy.
That's really cool. But I'll definitely be checking it out. If there's anything that I could ever do to help out in any way, man, I'm more than willing to. And like I said, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me and share your story.
Oh, man, I appreciate you coming out. Yeah.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate you.
All right, brother.
Thank you for listening to My Backstory. Stay motivated and stay connected off the show. Follow at my_backstory_ to be a part of the journey to recovery and to see where your story goes. Or visit us online at hereismybackstory.com.